Altering the facts turns our children into idiots. They claim it's for our safety. I'll tell you what it really is. Removing information that empowers all the citizens. The truth doesn't damage points of view that are legitimate. They're trying to change amen to amen. And
welcome, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing today? Hope you're having a fantastic day. I've been meaning to do this video. I just haven't had time. But the election's over and everything, I'll find the time. But look, this is a very serious matter, and it's something that I wanted to touch on. If you guys pay attention, there's some stuff going on, and it's a lot more than just the recent stuff. This has been going on for quite a while. We have a situation where the county sheriff, right? It's an elected position. It's a constitutional office. It is one of, if not the single most important law enforcement position in a county. The sheriff can actually only be arrested by the coroner, at least in Porte County. I think that's pretty straightforward across the board, but I'm very familiar with the Porte County aspect, so that's it. That's the only person that can arrest a sheriff. Now, why does that matter? And why does the topic of this video, why is it a big deal? Well, if you look at, and I got a special news story that I want to share with you in just a moment, but let's just look at it from an overarching view, right? So you have the sheriff of the county. He is in control, in command of the county sheriff's department. All the deputies, everybody reports to him. Now, one of the people running for county sheriff in this most recent election has worked very closely with federal law enforcement in the past. He's been involved with, federal task forces. He's undergone training. And I was actually at the polls where I was talking to one of his supporters, and he's like, I believe that they're, the best person for the job because they have this experience, working with the federal government, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'm not convinced that's a good thing. They said, what do you mean? I said, well, let's look at it this way, right? So policing has changed greatly over the years, right? We used to have the beat cops, who would walk the neighborhoods, talk to people. Sheriffs knew the names of the people in their counties. Now, I'm willing to admit that there have been instances where perhaps a different type of policing was called for. When you have a large concentration of gangs in a major city, obviously that's, different. Oddly enough, there was a HBO series called The Wire that I think did a great job of, expanding the way that policing has changed. And it's a really good series. But let's look at it this way. When you are, let's look at the training now, right? They're bringing in FBI and SWAT to train our everyday officers. Now, I believe that absolutely SWAT has a place, hostage negotiation teams, all these people have their place. But when the government itself, when SWAT officers, when FBI agents are responsible for training local departments, it's a very different type of policing. It's a very different type of interaction with the citizens. Now, when you're in that situation, right, if you're being trained by, say, people with the FBI or, anti-terrorism task force, things like this, you're taught to view them as the boss, right? You're taught to defer to them. You're taught to listen to them because they're training you. Now, do I think this is all some insidious plan? I'm not sure, right? But what I do know is let's, rather than focus on where it comes from and the goals there, let's look at the end result. Now, the end result is we have officers and sheriff's deputies that are trained by federal enforcement agents. And they're also I'm going to show you an example of what I mean when we talk about because there's a vast amount of money, federal money, that is going into local departments. Let's see here. Now, if we look, it says, there's one in particular. Here it is. So how rifles, tasers, and jails, how cities and states spent billions of COVID-19 relief, right? Now, the American Rescue Plan gave local governments $300 million to recover from COVID, right? Now, interestingly enough, they spent much of it on police, prisons, and the courts. Now, why does that matter? Let me share with you a news story here that's very, very interesting. This comes from Iowa, and Bonner County, the sheriff returns rescue plan fund, cites strings attached. And he's not wrong. Bonner County commissioners unanimously approved a series of requests from Sheriff Darrell Wheeler during the board's November 2nd business meeting, returning American Rescue Plan Act funds to the county coffers after Wheeler previously asked for the funds to cover COVID-related jail expenditures. I want you to pay close attention here. Wheeler asked to return the money obtained in 2 resolutions totaling almost $28,500 to cover COVID mitigation, after Bonner County Clerk Mike Rosedale pointed out a condition in the U.S. Treasury Department's guidelines for ARPA funds, stating that recipients of the federal money must agree, quote, to comply with all other applicable federal statutes, regulations, and executive orders, and recipients shall provide for such compliance by other parties in any agreements it enters into with other parties relating to this award. In a phone call with the reader following the nearly 2-hour commissioner meeting, the clerk said that the specific mention of executive orders is the great unknown, noting a possible nationwide vaccine mandate as a hypothetical. That's what's causing us pause, Rosedale said. You just want to know what you're getting into when you sign a contract, especially when almost $9 million is on the line. In an email following the board's approval to remove the funds from his office's budget, Wheeler, now this is the sheriff, there he is right there, explained his concerns further, sharing that he, quote, cannot and will not comply with federal statutes, regulations, and executive orders as the Treasury's rule dictates. Quote, those are the strings that are attached to accepting these ARPA funds, Wheeler wrote. Sheriffs do not enforce or follow edicts, mandates, or executive officers passed by the federal government agencies or of the President of the United States. By accepting these ARPA funds, I would be agreeing to comply. I will not. This is a real American hero right here. Darrell Wheeler in Iowa, Bonner County Sheriff, Darrell Wheeler. Now, why does this matter? So by shuffling in all of this money, right, and attaching this little deal here to it, any sheriff's department that takes this money is hereby agreeing to comply with anything, any executive orders, any mandates passed down, anything. Now, whether that is masks, whether that is the jab, whether that is making, for example, AR-15s banned, these sheriff's departments are agreeing to this. They're saying, yeah, okay, no problem. Give me the money. Now, a little bit deeper into this issue, and we have these officers, these sheriffs that are elected, right, that have become used to agreeing that the federal government is the boss. They defer to them, especially with the millions and millions of dollars that are now being shuffled into departments, but have been shuffled to them for quite a while. You know, the war on drugs, things like that. They come to rely on that money. They come to rely on these funds. And then when the federal government goes, you need to do this, a sheriff is much more likely to say, yeah, okay, that makes sense, rather than stand up for the constituents that he was represented to defend, right? It's very, very concerning. There are other stories like this, but this one in particular caught my eye. We'll return to it here because I think it's interesting. This is the first case of an Idaho sheriff refusing the rescue funds, according to Idaho Sheriff's Association Executive Director Jeff Levy. We have not heard about this in our state with any sheriff's office until you mentioned Bonner County today, Levy told the reader in an email on November 2nd. All Idaho sheriffs are independently elected and operate on what they feel is best for their county. The Idaho Sheriff's Association does not have any statutory authority to oversee and or review what an independently elected sheriff has chosen to do in their county. Commissioners shared that the county's legal team is currently reviewing the Treasury Department's guidelines attached to the ARPA funding, which is generally limited to covering expenses incurred due to the ongoing pandemic. We're waiting to find out from legal after they do the research where this stands. The three commissioners passed a resolution that we would obviously stand against the Biden administration, said Commissioner Dan McDonald, referencing a resolution passed October 22nd, securing the county's stance against mandates, specifically relating to the jab or masks. But before we make the decision to not use any more of the money, we want to make sure that legal has the chance to give us an opinion. Bonner County requested and received roughly $800,000 for its 2021 and 2022 budgets in September. ARPA would help pay for the inflated cost of medical supplies, etc. If the strings attached, as Wheeler called them, are deemed inappropriate by county legal officials, McDonald said Bonner County will refuse its share of the ARPA funds and write a check for the ARPA funds that is already spent. If it does come back that, yes, it does tie our hands to a degree, then we will certainly give it all back. That's a non-issue for us, he added. That being said, if it doesn't, then we're going to want to use this money because it's your money and our money. When asked whether he'd be asking taxpayers to make up the difference, Wheeler said no. To account for some of the ARPA money, he also presented a resolution to move nearly $18,500 from an office salaries budget meant to pay for jail positions currently not filled to a separate line item to cover the unanticipated cost of cleaning supplies. Commissioners also unanimously approved this request. Here it is right here. During that discussion, Wheeler rhetorically asked the room, quote, "How much is your freedom worth?" Rosedale chimed in to state that he'd be willing as a taxpayer to pay more in taxes to avoid depending on federal funds with conditions attached. As Darrell said, I would much rather pay it than be beholden to the federal government, especially executive orders from that fellow Brandon, Rosedale said, evoking laughs and cheers of "Let's go Brandon" from the crowded meeting room, referring to now viral moment at NASCAR race during which a sportscaster, you guys know what happened. It's very, very interesting. And all in all, we have a situation now where these sheriff's departments are being staffed now by people who have come to look at the federal government as the boss, right? They've worked with the federal government. They've been trained by, in many cases, FBI, counterterrorism experts, things like that. And we've gotten away from the local policing, and we've gone to a more overarching, heavy-handed style of policing. Now, I don't think there's an easy or quick solution, but I do believe that we need to convey to our local sheriffs that that's the type of behavior that we want. We want, like this guy from Iowa, we want a sheriff that is going to stand up to the federal government. We want a sheriff that is going to defend us, that's going to protect us from the overarching arm of said government. When you start a new job, right? No one is born knowing how to be a police officer, just like no one is born knowing how to be a lawyer or any other trained profession. When you go through training in the department, the basic training, right? They teach you the basics. But Advanced training is available in all fields, right? Correctional officers, the same thing. You go through your basic training and then you go with a field training officer who teaches you more. If those officers and if those training sessions are hosted by someone different than the organization, then you tend to look at that person as an authority figure. We can all agree on this, right? When you go to, let's say you go to a conference, right? And they present an expert in the field that you're at the conference for, right? You look at that person with an air of authority. You say, okay, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. Now, if consistently they're presenting the county sheriff's deputies with federal government, with FBI, with counterterror as experts, right? They come to learn to view these people as authority figures, right? When in reality, county sheriff has far more jurisdiction in a county than FBI does or any other federal agency. There's actually a story from Elkhart County, which I'm going to see if I can find real quick. I meant to have it up, but it's very, very interesting because the Elkhart County sheriff actually defended a citizen from the federal government. Let's see here. Kicks out. Let's see if I can find it. Here it is. Okay. This is very, very interesting. Okay. So this is from GOA, Gun Owners of America, which very good organization, by the way. I have reported earlier that sheriffs in New Mexico are threatening to arrest federal agents if they attempt to enforce unconstitutional federal acts in contravention of state law. The even better news is that sheriffs in other states are doing the same. Sheriff Brad Rogers of Elkhart County, Indiana, has told FDA agents they will be arrested if they go on Amish farmer David Hochstetler's land, having falsely alleged that raw, unpasteurized milk sold by Hochstetler had caused several cases of food poisoning. The FDA filed a complaint in federal court to support their attack on the farmer. I have consumed raw milk for years and can affirm that it is not only safe, but much healthier than pasteurized milk. Now, look, I don't know. I'm not getting into raw milk versus pasteurized, but I do know that Indiana, it's only legal to sell for pets, right? But it's weird because I can't find any definitive data that it's dangerous. It's something that I was actually going to look into if elected, but this is interesting. The threat of incarceration led the feds to withdraw their complaint against Hochstetler. This was even after U.S. Department of Justice Attorney Ross Goldstein emailed the sheriff that he would be arrested if he protected Hochstetler. When Sheriff Rogers refused to back down, the FDA cried uncle. Rogers' communication to the feds seemed to have been quite convincing. Quote, any further attempts to inspect this farm without a warrant signed by a local judge based on probable cause will result in federal inspectors' removal or arrest for trespassing by my officers or I. The feds have gotten used to acting without due process. In that case, that means not bothering to get a search warrant. Rogers' campaign website listed his number one objective as, quote, upholding the Constitution. Oh, this man, I love this man. He is also concerned about the heart condition of his inmates and is determined to help, quote, provide hope to change a heart. Under that header, he says the Elkhart County Jail has 74 church services a month and allows unprecedented access to ministry volunteers. Not only can we impact inmates for the here and now, but for eternity. Sheriff Rogers requires his deputies to take 3 two-day classes on the Constitution at a tuition rate of $125 per person. Rogers is not alone in his love for the Constitution. Ellis County, Texas Sheriff Johnny Brown has stated he would resist any effort by the federal government to confiscate firearms in his county. There's a whole list of county sheriffs that have stepped up, right? And it's absolutely insane that this is necessary, but it is. I highly recommend checking this out. Sheriff Standing with the People Against the Feds. But if you look at this, let's see here. Right here, March 28, 2022, at DOJ alone, the president's budget calls for $20.6 billion in discretionary funding for federal law enforcement and state and local law enforcement. There are so many dollars that go into county level and local level sheriff's departments and police departments. Why? Because if you get this, look, money drives everything, right? If you threaten these people with, you're going to have to comply or you're not going to get the millions and millions of dollars that we've set aside for you, right? It makes it much easier to go, it's just a little step over. It's just a little bit that we've lost, right? Once you lose your freedom, you're not going to get it back. And I'm glad to see that there are sheriffs around that are stepping up. I'd like to see more, obviously. Hopefully we can open some eyes. But let's talk about LaPorte County and the election results. The big things that are the takeaways are the commissioner's race. Sheila Matias has been defeated. Connie Grammarosa won handily. And I'm really, really excited for that. I'm really excited with her, with Joe Haney. And now Rich Mrozinski is the odd man out, and he can sit there quietly while real work gets done. Now, remember, Rich is the guy that has posted these posters up around. He was caught on camera taking a rubber snake inside the building and delivering it to a sitting elected official, right? When confronted, oh, it wasn't me. Then when they said, you're on video, he's like, oh, I did it for somebody else. The guy's a POS. That's just the reality of it. So he can sit there quietly. He's not up for election yet for another 2 years, but he's gone. He is absolutely gone. If he decides to seek re-election, he will be primaried and someone will defeat him. He has absolutely no chance. But this was the last time he was running, he said, so hopefully we can get someone else in. Again, it doesn't really matter because with Connie and Joe Haney, yes, we can finally get some things done. The other big takeaway was the prosecutor's race. My man, Sean Fagan, won that. Good job, Sean. I'm very, very happy for you. And more importantly, I'm happy for the people of LaPorte County because they were tired of the shenanigans that were happening. One of the biggest things from the commissioner's race that we can take away is that Shaw Friedman will no longer be the attorney for the commissioners. Now, for those of you not from LaPorte County, you may not know why that matters. He is an unelected bureaucrat that has taken it upon himself to do some unsavory things within county government. He is constantly referred to himself as the, quote, county attorney. He is not the county attorney. And he's even newspapers call him the county attorney. He's not. He is the attorney for the commissioners. That's it. He seems to have a very inflated sense of self-worth. There's a lot more that I could say, but the short version is he's already putting it out there. He knows he's not going to get rehired, right? He hasn't specifically stepped down, but we know that at the first session, they're going to have to pick the state employees, or excuse me, the county employees, right? So they're going to have to choose who is on various boards. They're going to choose who the attorney is for the county commissioners. And Rich is the only reason that Friedman was still around. That's ancient history. Feel free to look into it if you want. But 2022 was the year, right? 23 beginning at January session. Shaw Friedman will no longer be the attorney for the commissioners of LaPorte County. Assuming, Connie keeps her campaign promises, which I see no reason why she wouldn't. Her and Joe Haney are already discussing who's going to come in, who's going to take over. I don't know the process there. I haven't spoken to them about who they have in mind, but they said they have a few people in mind. That will be phenomenal. That will be absolutely phenomenal. The chairman for the Democratic Party has stepped down, Dr. Vidyakora. He was the chairman for a little while. He stepped down because of the up and down the board losses in LaPorte County. Unfortunately, I didn't win my race. You guys probably know that already. But you know what? I'm going to say this. For everything that happens, there's a reason. But I was outspent significantly. I don't have that kind of money. I didn't focus on fundraising as much as I should have. I hate asking people for money, and it's one of the hardest things about politics is you have to ask, and especially for Republicans, because I'm going to say, someone brought up a good point a little while ago, and I kind of agree with them. They said, as Republicans, we're used to doing it on our own, right? It's one of the tenets of being a constitutional Republican is you believe that everyone should do things themselves, right? You have a responsibility for your actions. You have a responsibility to do the things for yourself, right? You don't rely on handouts. You don't rely on this. So you do everything that you can for yourself. When it comes to campaigns, when it comes to running for office, unless you're independently wealthy, which I am not, you have to rely on donations. You have to go and you have to beg people for money. And there's an art to it. There certainly is a specific way that it needs to be done. And I'm not great at it yet. That said, we did exceptionally well for being outspent and for the opposition going so negative at the end. I didn't go negative. I simply said I don't think they do a good job, and there's nothing negative about that. That's why I'm running. I think they do a crappy job. What am I going to do politically? I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe I'll just focus on taking the show and turning it into something a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. We'll see. There are some job offers that are coming in that I am considering. And there are some other contacts that I've made that are potentially leading somewhere. A lot of things are in flux right now. We'll see what happens. But I do intend to continue the show. I think there are some important things that need to be talked about. I think there are some important things out there that kind of fly under the radar like this. I think there's a much bigger discussion to be had when we start talking to some of these sheriff's candidates and some of these sitting sheriffs. As a matter of fact, I'm going to see if I can get in touch with the Elkhart County Sheriff, because I'd love to have him on the show and talk to him, because I think a lot of people could learn from him. One of the biggest issues with policing these days is it seems like a lot of these local officers and county sheriffs don't really understand the Constitution. They understand that they're there to protect and serve to a degree, but they don't understand that the Constitution trumps all, right? And one example that I've talked about before is the so-called audits, right? The First Amendment audits, where people go out and they have a camera and we can just watch these videos to understand the flawed training that is going on. And I've given my opinion of these things in the past. I've talked about them at length. There's no reason to rehash it here, but I'll say this. I think we can all learn from those, and we can all push for better training for our officers. A lot of stuff coming up, guys. I think the first of the year is going to be very interesting when we get these new people into office. Sheriff Heeg, I think, is a great man. Sheriff-elect Ron Heeg. I'm really excited that he won. I hope that he continues the sheriff's department in the way that it is, and I hope he expands the thinking when it comes to sheriff versus federal. As I said, it was actually his opponent that had worked closely with federal law enforcement officials in the past, and I don't necessarily look at that as a positive thing anymore. We'll see what happens. We will see what happens. I'm really excited about the future of LaPorte County, especially given the election results, and I think we'll have some good stuff coming up. Justin Keel won. Yeah. We're looking good, people. We're looking good. Even Porter County did really, really well there for a little while. It was kind of concerning because the ballots were coming in and it looked like Porter County was going blue up and down. But then I think that was the early ballots and the mail-in ballots, and then it evened out and became a red wave over there. The only real places that I think we kind of lost, for lack of a better term, obviously state rep, my race. Both, that wasn't just me though. In Porter County, Chuck Mosley won re-election. That guy's been there forever. I don't think he does a great job. I don't think Pat Boyd does a great job. I don't think she does a job at all, personally, but it is what it is. Hopefully moving forward, we can either flip it or move on from it. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But there's some really good races. Barb Regnitz won in Porter County. That's huge. I think she's going to do a phenomenal job. That's a woman who worked her butt off for that. So my hat's off to her. She for sure outworked everybody I know. I'm disappointed about Jennifer Ruth Green's loss, but again, and I'll say this, I heard this rumor, and I don't know if it's true. Something about Leva supporters boycotting the election and not going out there and voting because their guy didn't win. Listen, I've said this before, but I'm just gonna break it down. That's one of the problems, and that's one of the things that the Democrats have over the Republicans or independents. When someone loses a primary, those people need to get behind the winner. That's what needs to happen. If we're going to make the changes, and then you keep track of what they do and don't do, you make a list, and in the next election, you primary that person if you think they're doing a bad job. If what happened, if what I read happened, and if an army of Republicans that just happened to favor Mark Leva over Jennifer Ruth Green, if they stayed home and allowed Murdan to win this seat again, that's very, very sad. It's very sad. Now, I have my own issues with Jennifer Ruth Green in a couple of particular areas, but overall, I see her as a vast improvement over Frank Murdan. If that's really what happened, then I'm very disappointed. Look, my wife ran for commissioner in the primary, right? She lost. It is what it is. She lost. I didn't like what happened at the end, so I said some things, but ultimately at the end, I got behind the candidate that won. That's what you do. That's how it works. That's what primaries are for. Now, that said, we'll see what happens in 2 years, I guess. I like Mark Leva as a person. I just think at some point you have to go, okay, I'm not going to win this. And especially if there's a group of people that's like, well, if it's not him, I'm not voting for anybody. Okay. All right. Then, enjoy the Democrats being in charge. I hate that it's that way, I will say this, there are some races that happen all the way over in Lake County and here, but that I was very happy with the results, regardless of the parties involved. I can't say that I'm happy a Republican got defeated or anything, but I can say there were some people running that lost that I was like, oh, make up your own mind. I got some good information coming up. I got some good shows lined up. We're gonna get more into it here pretty soon. But hey, thanks for joining me. I appreciate you guys. And yeah, Connie, politics is it's in everything, and there's nothing we can do about it. The only thing we can do is learn how these people are doing things. And I'm going to say this as well. If we're going to continue to make strides, if we're going to continue winning, we have to get better at organizing. there were some serious issues this election season with candidate organization and getting together, right? There were several instances where I found out, like, for example, I'd go door knocking in an area, right? They'd be like, oh, this person was just out here yesterday. And it's, you know, a fellow Republican. And I'm like, why wouldn't we communicate and just go together? We don't necessarily have to tie our campaigns together or anything, but we can easily cover a larger area if we just door knock together. We can do signs together. We can do like all of this. I have resources. They have resources. It only makes sense. Democrats do this all the time. They get together. They focus their resources. And I'm not talking about even financially, just boots on the ground. It's really frustrating when, especially when prior to the election, you say, okay, we're going to work together. We're going to get this done. And then when it actually comes down to it, there's, you know, crickets in the clink of silverware. That's it. That's what you hear. So, but that said, overall, very, very, very happy with the results locally. Very happy with LaPorte and Porter counties. I think we're in for a treat. I think some really great things are coming. And nationally, it is what it is. I think there are some serious issues that need to be resolved. These voting machines are supposed to make things faster. They're supposed to make things easier. That's the entire purpose of them, allegedly. But when you're still counting votes a week after the election, what? Like, something is wrong here. Something's very wrong. If the machines are not making things faster or better, then why are we using them? I hope some things get resolved. So without further ado, thank you for joining me. God bless you. God bless Indiana, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.